Okay, let's unpack this. The endless pursuit of power is truly at the heart of any great action RPG. In Diablo IV, it's not just about, slaying demons. It's really about transforming your character into an unstoppable force. But how exactly do you actually do that effectively? It's a question that can feel, well, pretty overwhelming, given the sheer depth of the game. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the intricate world of Diablo IV's character progression and itemization. Our mission, to demystify how gear, legendary powers, advanced endgame systems, and even the brand new rune words from the Vessel of Hatred expansion all combine. To let you truly customize your character and unlock their full potential. Forget just clicking on whatever drops, right? We're talking about strategic, informed choices that elevate your gameplay from, good to truly optimized.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here, and something I hear from a lot of players, is that Diablo IV presents a truly layered challenge. It's not a simple linear path, not at all. And understanding these systems is absolutely key to moving beyond simply finding loot to truly optimizing your character. We've gathered some comprehensive sources to guide us through every crucial detail, from the basic stats on your first weapon all the way to the most intricate combinations of endgame enhancements. It's really all about uncovering those powerful synergies.
So imagine you've just stepped into Sanctuary for the first time, right? A fresh hero in a grim world. What's the very first thing you focus on? It's gotta be your gear, the core of your power. It's not just about looking cool, though. We'll definitely touch on that important part later. In Diablo IV, gear accounts for the vast majority of your character's overall power. This isn't just some minor boost, it's huge. It's what dictates your kill speed against hordes of demons, and maybe more importantly, your survivability when those demons hit back harder. What's kind of brilliant about Diablo IV's gear design is how intuitive it feels, even with all that depth. Every single gear slot is designed with a thematic connection to specific stats. Your weapons, naturally, they're all about raw damage output. But recognizing that your chest armor is your primary defensive canvas, or that your boots are always your ticket to faster movement. It's a key early insight that guides your choices, even before you master the finer points of min-maxing.
Exactly. Min-maxing, that's pushing every single percentage point of your stats to its absolute limit, and updating this gear is absolutely vital for that. It's true that initially looking at all the possible stats on gear can seem, incredibly overwhelming. There's just so much. But as you spend more time in Sanctuary, clear themes start to emerge, making it much more digestible. Let's break down what you can expect from different gear pieces. Your armor pieces, that's your helm, chest, gloves, pants, and boots. These generally grant defensive and utility stats. So you are typically looking for things like plus max life, boosts to primary attributes like strength or intelligence, plus skill ranks that directly increase the power of your abilities, various resistances to elemental damage, and of course movement speed. These are basically your foundational layers of defense and utility.
Makes sense, the core protection.
Right. Then you have jewelry pieces, specifically rings and amulets. These tend to focus more on damage, utility, and resource management. What's consistent across all jewelry is that they always provide a baseline of resistances, giving you a fundamental layer of protection against elemental attacks. Finally, your weapon pieces. Whether you're wielding a one-handed weapon, a massive two-handed weapon, or an offhand like a shield or focus, these are the core determinant of your damage per second, or DPS. This directly impacts how much damage your skills deal and how quickly you can execute many of your attacks. Weapons also provide access to powerful damage multipliers, such as vulnerable damage, which is a massive bonus against afflicted enemies.
Oh yeah, vulnerable is huge.
It really is. Plus critical strike damage for those satisfying big hits, and damage over time effects, or Dodo Ts, which are crucial for certain builds. And for that extra layer of customization, many gear slots can be enhanced by adding gems and sockets. These grant additional targeted stats. Just pop them in.
So okay, we understand what to look for, stats-wise. But what about the sheer thrill of finding that rare drop, that moment of excitement? Can you walk us through Diablo IV's loot hierarchy, from the mundane to the mythical?
Absolutely. The progression of item rarities is a classic RPG journey, right? You start with common items, the gray stuff, then move to magic, blue, rare, yellow, legendary orange, unique, also often orange but distinct, and finally the incredibly rare mythic unique items, often a brighter, distinct color. What's neat is that as your character levels up, the types of items you find adjust with you. Common and magic items start to drop less often, while rare and legendary become much more frequent, reflecting your increasing power. When it comes to how many additional stats or affixes an item has, it's pretty simple. Common items have no affixes. Magic items typically have just a single affix. Rare items usually start with 2, though in recent seasons they can rarely have an extra one, which is a nice little bonus. Legendary items, which are really the backbone of most builds, reliably come with 3 affixes.
And the uniques, he seems special.
They are. Unique items are a special beast. They have unique, often powerful, unmodifiable effects. What this means is you cannot imprint a legendary aspect onto them, nor can you overwrite their existing unique effects. They are what they are, which is often a build-defining piece, something you might build your entire character around. And here's a crucial point about tradability. Most items are tradable unless they've been masterworked or tempered. Those are endgame crafting processes we'll definitely get into shortly. But there's a big exception here. Mythic uniques are always account-bound. Always.
Okay, no trading the super rares. Got it.
Exactly. This means no trading those absolute top-tier items. You have to earn them yourself.
That makes sense. So it's not just about the color of the item, the rarity, but something deeper. It's power level. Tell us more about item power and how it dictates the strength of what you find.
Right. Item power and its associated tiers are directly related to the inherent strength of your gear. It's a core number you'll be watching. Item power directly determines the range of affixes on your equipment. So a higher item power piece of gear has the potential for much stronger statistical rolls on those affixes. Higher potential is key. As your character level increases, so too does the item power of the gear you loot. It's a natural progression. This ensures your gear stays relevant as you grow stronger. A significant milestone comes with ancestral legendary items. These are unlocked once you venture into torment difficulties, the higher world tiers, and they always drop with 800 item power. Critically, they also come with a guaranteed greater affix.
A greater affix, what's that exactly?
A greater affix is basically a significantly stronger roll on one of its stats, like way higher than the normal maximum roll. It's a big power jump. This item power breakpoint, usually around character level 60 when you start seeing ancestrals, isn't just a number. It's kind of the green light for the true endgame grind. Once you consistently see gear at 750 plus item power, you can generally stop agonizing over every single drop. You can confidently focus on ancestral legendaries, knowing you've hit the sweet spot for top-tier OFIX ranges. That's where the real optimization begins.
And finally, a word for those of us who appreciate the finer things in life. The fashionistas of Sanctuary, transmog, or the wardrobe system. For many players, let's be honest, looking cool is just as important as having powerful stats. I know I spend time on it.
Oh, absolutely. Fashion endgame is real.
The great news is that Diablo IV allows you to do both. When you salvage a piece of gear at the blacksmith, it permanently captures its visual appearance for your wardrobe. It's like learning its look. So you can apply that look to any other piece of gear in that same slot, regardless of its stats. Transmog only changes the look. It doesn't transfer stats or powers whatsoever, purely cosmetic. But that's the beauty of it, right? It's the joy of keeping that cool, early-level flaming sword aesthetic, even when you found a statistically superior but maybe, less visually inspiring sword that you need for its raw power.
Exactly. Because if you're going to slay demons, you might as well look fabulous doing it. It's the best of both worlds.
Okay, this next part is what I found personally fascinating, and it's where your character truly starts to come alive. It's legendary aspects. Legendary items in Diablo IV don't just drop with good stats. They come with unique, build-altering effects called legendary aspects. This is really the heart of your character's customization. The whole system is incredibly flexible. Players can equip a legendary item immediately if it's an upgrade, straightforward enough. Or, and this is where the real power lies, one can salvage the item at the blacksmith to extract its aspect. Be aware, though, that salvaging destroys the item itself, but you gain its valuable power, its essence.
Right. The aspect gets stored in your inventory, or even better, potentially upgrades your codex.
Exactly. Once extracted, you can then imprint this aspect onto any rare item, which immediately turns it into a legendary item, or onto another legendary item, overriding its current aspect. This means you can take a perfectly rolled rare item, maybe one with 3 greater affixes you painstakingly found.
Yeah, those dream rares.
And give it the exact legendary power you need for your build. It's huge. And here's another key detail for market-savvy players. Legendary items are tradable as long as they haven't been crafted on. Enchanted, tempered, masterwork, nope.
Right. If it's untouched, you can trade it.
This opens up possibilities for playing the in-game market, either buying or selling well-rolled legendaries.
And stepping back a moment to look at the broader impact, it becomes clear that not all aspects can be imprinted on all items. It's a crucial design choice, I think. It forces thoughtful build choices beyond just stacking raw damage multipliers everywhere. Legendary aspects are divided by category, and each category dictates which gear slots it can be applied to. It makes you think about placement. For instance, offensive aspects, the ones that boost your damage, can be imprinted on one-handed weapons, two-handed weapons. And importantly, on two-handers, their power is increased by a substantial 100%. That's double effect.
Wow, double. Okay, that's a big incentive for 2H builds.
Definitely. Offensive also goes on gloves, rings, and amulets. And on amulets, their power is increased by a significant 50%. Defensive aspects are, naturally, for helms, chest armor, pants, shields, and amulets again, with that 50% power increase on amulets. Resource aspects, which help with your mana, fury, spirit, essence, whatever. They go on rings and amulets, 50% on amulets. Utility aspects offer a broad range of effects, like crowd control duration, cooldown reduction, things like that. They can be found on shields, helms, chest armor, pants, boots, gloves, and amulets. Again, 50% on amulets. And finally, mobility aspects are specifically for boots and amulets, with that same 50% boost on amulets.
So the amulet's like a prime real estate slot, huh? Give that 50% bonus on so many types.
Absolutely. That amulet's 50% power increase across 5 different aspect categories is a truly significant detail for your build planning. It often makes it the prime target for your single most impactful aspect.
Yeah.
You really want that bonus. This categorical restriction means you can't just slap every offensive aspect onto every piece of gear. You have to strategize. You have to think about where each piece fits into your overall setup.
So, okay, you've got these incredible legendary aspects, but what if you want to reuse them? Or maybe you found a max rolled aspect early on.
Yeah.
But the item it's on isn't great. You don't want to lose that perfect roll for future gear, right? How do you handle that without constantly extracting?
That's exactly where the Codex of Power comes in. Think of it as your permanent library, a collection of all the legendary powers you've discovered. You can imprint aspects from the Codex at the Occultist infinitely, as many times as you want, provided you have the materials.
Okay, that's amazing. How do you add powers to this invaluable library?
Several ways. You do it by completing dungeons. Each dungeon you clear for the first time is tied to a specific aspect, adds it right to your Codex. You can also acquire them from season journey rewards, which often give you unique or powerful aspects. Those can really propel your character forward faster in a new season. And, as we mentioned, by salvaging legendary items at the blacksmith. This is where it gets really smart. After salvaging a legendary item, if it had a higher tier aspect, a better roll than what you already have in your Codex, that aspect in your Codex automatically and permanently upgrades to the salvage value.
No way. So you never waste a good roll by salvaging.
Exactly. You can rest assured you're never wasting it. You can re-imprint that better version infinitely from that point forward. It's a fantastic system. Quick note on realms. The Codex is considered seasonal, meaning it resets for new seasons if you're playing a seasonal character. Starts fresh. However, Eternal Realm players, those playing outside the seasons, they never experience these resets. Their Codex is permanent.
And I heard there's a quality of life feature for hunting specific aspects.
Yeah, it's great. If you're hunting for a specific aspect, say you need one for your build, you can track and navigate directly to the dungeon containing that power right from the Codex menu. It'll even put a handy line on your map leading you straight there. Super useful.
That's brilliant. Saves so much time alt-tabbing or looking things up.
Totally. Oh, and one more thing about aspects. Remember those ancestral legendary items we talked about? The ones from Torment? They also have a higher maximum range on their aspects when compared to normal legendary items found in lower difficulties. For example, the Rapid aspect, which boosts basic attack speed, might have a range of 15-30% on a normal legendary. But on an ancestral legendary item, that range expands to 15-35%. So you can potentially get an even stronger version of the same power.
Giving players even more potential power to chase. Nice.
That actually brings up a crucial point. We've talked about skills you put points into on your standard skill tree, the ones you level up. But what about those unique abilities that seem to pop up from specific gear? What's the deal with these class subskills? Are they different?
Yeah, I've seen those mentioned. Like abilities that aren't on the tree at all.
Exactly. These are unique abilities fitting the class fantasy, accessed primarily through specific legendary aspects and unique items. They aren't skills you allocate points into on your standard skill tree, they're granted by the gear itself. For example, a barbarian can access earthquakes through certain aspects, creating tremors. A druid might get lightning dancer's effects, chaining lightning between enemies. A necromancer can utilize ultimate shadow, enhancing their shadow damage spells. Rogues can unlock artful initiative, maybe dropping stun grenades. Sorcerers might get glacial effects related to chilling and freezing. And the new Spiritborn class has things like infestation or empowered feathers, adding unique dodo teas or projectiles.
But what's the purpose? Just extra flavor?
It's more than flavor. The purpose of these subskills is really twofold. One, they can create entirely new build archetypes that don't rely solely on your core skills, build enabling sometimes. And two, they also provide creative solutions or enhancements for existing builds, like need more crowd control or stuns as a rogue, slot in an aspect that grants artful initiative, want extra damage over time as a Spiritborn, consider an aspect providing infestation. These subskills are designed to open up new tactical possibilities and enhance your character's capabilities in unexpected ways. They really push the boundaries of what your class can do, adding another layer of cool customization.
All right, so you've put in the hours, your character feels strong, those legendary aspects are singing, and your build is humming along nicely. But the true quest for perfection, right? The real endgame customization. That's where tempering and masterworking come in. This is where you elevate your character from just powerful to potentially unstoppable.
Yeah, this is where the deep endgame grind really starts.
Tempering allows players to add powerful, often build-defining affixes to their legendary equipment. This is a critical step in truly pushing your character's power ceiling. It's important to note, however, that unique items cannot be tempered. Their effects are fixed, as we discussed earlier, locked in stone.
Right. Uniques are unique, you can't add tempers to them. Only legendaries and rares that you make legendary.
So how does tempering actually work? What's the process?
It relies on tempering manuals. These are items players find randomly from most in-game content. Think Hell Tides, world bosses, regular dungeons, nightmare dungeons, and especially the pit. I draw it pretty frequently. When you use a manual, you permanently learn a tempering recipe. It gets added to your collection at the blacksmith. And that recipe can be reused an unlimited number of times. No more worrying about finding another copy, you just learn it once.
Okay, that's good. Learn once, use forever.
Exactly. The quality of these manuals varies by difficulty. You'll find magic quality manuals in standard difficulties, while the better, rare, and legendary quality manuals with stronger affix options drop in torment difficulties. And a key detail is that tempering manuals are class-bound. A rogue will find rogue manuals, a sorc finds sorc manuals. And if you try to temper an item with another class's manual, the affix will simply be inactive on your character. It prevents weird cross-class power exploitation.
Makes sense. So these recipes, are they categorized like the aspects were?
They are, yeah. Tempering recipes are also organized into tempering categories, similar to legendary aspects. These include weapons, offensive, defensive, utility, mobility, and resource categories. This categorization is crucial because legendary items can actually have 2 tempering affixes added to them, but they must belong to different categories. You can't put 2 offensive tempers on one item, for example.
Okay. So it forces interesting strategic choices about combining effects.
Precisely. For example, a helm can take 1 defensive temper and 1 utility temper. Gloves can take 1 offensive and 1 utility. Amulets, again being surprisingly versatile, can draw from 5 different categories, making them prime candidates for highly specialized tempering.
Amulets are just MVPs all around, huh?
Pretty much. They offer a lot of flexibility.
Now let's talk about the tempering cost. I assume this isn't free.
Not at all. It scales with the item power of the selected equipment. The more powerful the item, the more materials it requires. You'll need common materials like iron chunks or rawhides, veiled crystals, and depending on the item type, armor, jewelry, or weapon-specific, legendary salvage materials like baleful fragments, coiling wards, or abstruse sigils. You'll also need forgotten souls, a valuable resource primarily found in Hell Tides. So Hell Tides become even more important.
Okay, materials. But here's perhaps the most nerve-wracking part I've heard about. Tempering reroll and the brick factor. What's that about?
Ah, yes, the infamous bricking potential. When you temper an item, a random affix is picked from the chosen recipe. So if a recipe has, say, 4 different possible affixes, you're rolling a 1 in 4 dice to get the specific one you want.
Okay, RNG.
Right. Now, players get a handful of reroll charges per item. It starts at 5, I believe. Plus, you get an additional charge for each greater affix already present on the item. So an item with 3 greater affixes would give you 8 total charges, which helps.
But what's the catch?
Now, for the big warning, tempering doesn't let you keep the previous result if you reroll. You are always rolling for a new random result from the recipe pool, which means You risk bricking an otherwise perfect item if you run out of charges and don't get the desired affix, or worse, roll something completely useless for your build.
Oof. So you could have a great item, try to get the perfect temper, run out of rolls, and end up with something bad.
Exactly. It's a genuine gamble. Trying to hit specific affixes means you'll often be pushing your luck, like aiming for one specific affix from a recipe of 4 possibilities and another specific affix from a different category recipe with 5 possibilities. The odds of hitting both within those initial 5 rerolls are actually less than 50%. It's a true test of patience and sometimes heartache.
Wow. That brick factor sounds incredibly frustrating, like a real gut punch for players who've invested so much time finding that base item. Is there a philosophy behind that kind of high-stakes gambling, or is it just a pure test of luck? What's the thinking there?
Well, I think it's definitely a calculated risk design. The idea is likely to make each successful temper feel incredibly rewarding because it wasn't guaranteed. It pushes players to make strategic choices. Do I re-roll again and risk it, or do I accept a good enough outcome rather than always chasing absolute perfection? It adds tension and weight to the process. But there is a safety net, a small one, but it exists.
Oh, tell me more.
There's an item called a Scroll of Restoration. This allows players to restore all tempering charges after they are spent. But you can only use this powerful scroll once per item, and you obtain them from challenging content like the Dark Citadel and Infernal Hordes. They're rare.
Okay, so a one-time reset button if things go really wrong.
Essentially, yes. Just remember, it only restores charges for the same tempering category previously applied, so it won't help you if you decide you wanted a different type of temper altogether. It just resets the rolls for the category you bricked.
Got it. A limited but valuable safety net.
Exactly. Now, once your item is fully tempered, hopefully with affixes you're happy with, the ultimate polish kicks in with Masterworking. This is a true endgame system, also performed at the blacksmith. Masterworking allows you to significantly improve the quality of all affixes on your equipment, including those powerful tempered affixes you just added, and any greater affixes.
Okay, so this buffs everything already on the item.
Correct. The primary material for Masterworking is Obgisite, which players will primarily find in Nightmare Dungeons, the Undercity, and the Infernal Hordes activities. Beyond Obgisite, it also requires a significant amount of gold and other crafting materials like veiled crystals, iron chunks, forgotten souls, etc. And I mean significant. Masterworking is incredibly expensive. Reaching the maximum rank for just a single item can cost millions upon millions of gold, plus hundreds of other rare materials.
Wow. So this is where consistent gold farming truly becomes essential, huh?
Absolutely. You'll need deep pockets for this stage.
So what are the actual Masterworking bonuses? What do you get for all that cost?
Okay, for normal, legendary, and unique items, the maximum rank is 8. However, for the top tier stuff, ancestral legendary, ancestral unique, or mythic unique items, you can masterwork all the way up to rank 12. At most ranks, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, Masterworking increases all affixes on the item by 5%. Nice little bump across the board. But here's where it gets exciting. At ranks 4, 8, and 12, one random affix on your item gets a much larger 25% bonus instead of the standard 5%.
Ah, like a critical hit for crafting.
Exactly. This is commonly called critting an affix, or an MW crit. And an affix can even crit multiple times across those milestone ranks. This is indicated by a color change on the affix. Blue means it crit once at rank 4, 8, or 12. Yellow means it crit twice, for example, at rank 4 and rank 8. And orange means it hit the jackpot and crit all 3 times, ranks 4, 8, and 12.
Orange must be incredibly rare.
Extremely. Now, these bonuses, including the inherent 50% boost from a greater affix if your item has one, are additive. So let's take an example from the sources. If you have a 20% critical strike chance affix on an ancestral legendary item, and let's say it's also a greater affix, so it starts higher, maybe 30% base instead of 20%, plus the 50% GA bonus, and then it receives just one MW crit at rank 12, the 25% bonus. That stat can jump significantly. We saw numbers like 34% total mention. It adds up fast.
That's a huge increase from just one crit. Okay, I see the appeal.
Definitely. Masterworking also has a specific impact on skill ranks, like plus skills to specific abilities. There is a pattern here often referred to by the community as the 30% rule. It seems there's a fairly consistent pattern. Players often get an extra rank each time the cumulative Masterworking bonus reaches a 30% threshold for that skill affix. This means a skill rank might increase at, say, rank 7, even without landing a critical Masterwork roll on it, just from the accumulating 5% bumps.
So you can get cheap skill ranks sometimes just by hitting those thresholds.
Pretty much, yeah. It offers potentially cheap, early skill rank upgrades before the big crit milestones. While this system can apparently be a bit inconsistent for skills starting at +4 ranks or higher, these specific breakpoints are valuable targets. And even small percentage gains from skill ranks, like a minor damage increase from a passive skill going from rank 9 to 10, really matter for highly optimized characters. Those players are pushing the absolute limits of their build, squeezing out every last bit of power.
Makes sense. So, what if you get unlucky with those crits? Can you undo it? Let's talk resetting Masterworking.
Yes, you can! Players can reset an item's Masterworking ranks back down to rank 0 at the blacksmith. Wipe it clean.
Why would you ever do that after investing so much?
Primarily if the big 25% MetaBU crit bonus at rank 4, 8, or 12 landed on a less valuable affix for your build. Like it hits plus maximum life when you really need it on, plus critical strike damage. Dedicated players, the real min-maxers, might reset an item at rank 8 if the rank 4 and rank 8 crits didn't land well, hoping for better luck on the next attempt. Though our sources emphasize this is extremely costly. Resetting isn't cheap either. Resetting at rank 12 is generally not recommended unless you are absolutely overflowing with materials, as it's a full wipe of all your progress on that item back to 0.
And the reset cost itself?
It's significant. We're talking 5 million gold, plus a hefty chunk of other materials like Obdicite and Forgotten Souls. It's a decision not to be taken lightly, really only something you'd consider when you absolutely must try for a better critical roll on a near-perfect item.
Okay, so you've hit level 60. Maybe your gear is tempered and masterworked.
Right.
You're feeling pretty powerful. But the journey isn't over. Not by a long shot. This is where the Paragon boards come in. This system is arguably your most powerful way to continue progressing your character beyond raw levels. It allows for just massive customization. It's not just about getting stronger numbers either. It forces you to make meaningful decisions that can greatly impact your build, tailoring it to your exact playstyle. It's really deep.
It really is. The Paragon boards are truly massive grids, almost like constellations of power, and they have 6 distinct node types, all designed to work together to enhance your character. First, you have the normal nodes. These are basically the veins that connect everything. They look simple, maybe just gray dots, and they always grant a small bonus, typically +5, to a primary attribute like strength, intelligence, willpower, or dexterity. They seem small, but they are crucial because meeting certain attribute requirements from these nodes is necessary to unlock bonuses from the more powerful rare nodes and glyphs. They add up.
So fuel the bigger nodes.
Exactly. Next, we have magic nodes, usually blue. These provide larger attribute boosts compared to normal nodes, or they offer specific power affix bonuses, like plus armor percent or plus damage percent. They're especially valuable when they're clustered near glyph sockets, as they can directly contribute to fulfilling a glyph's attribute requirements. Then there are rare nodes, the yellow ones. These have a truly significant impact on your character's build. They stand out. They provide 2 different attributes, plus a substantial bonus effect that you unlock by meeting a minimum attribute requirement from surrounding nodes. When that requirement is met, the bonus actually doubles, and the connection line to the node turns green, visually indicating its full power is active. It's very satisfying to see that happen.
Double bonus.
Yes.
Yeah, but be aware. These attribute thresholds increase as you attach more Paragon boards later in your progression, so unlocking them gets harder over time. The flashy orange nodes are the legendary nodes. These are the big ones, usually 1 per board, that define each board's overall theme. They often provide powerful multiplicative damage bonuses or unique build-altering effects. They're incredibly strong. While important, don't assume they're the only thing that matters on a board. Sometimes the path to the legendary node is just as important. You have to consider the board as a whole. A good rare node cluster or a well-placed glyph socket might be just as impactful for your build.
Okay, and you mentioned glyph sockets.
Right, the glyph sockets. These are arguably the most complex nodes, requiring the most thought and strategic planning. Players place glyphs, which are separate items we'll discuss, into these sockets. Each glyph has unique effects. These effects either improve nearby rare or magic nodes within a certain radius, or they draw power from nearby nodes based on the attributes allocated within that radius. This demands really careful planning to maximize their benefits. You need the right glyph in the right socket on the right board. Finally, we have the board attachment gates. These are special nodes, usually at the edge of each board. They connect one Paragon board to another, letting you expand your grid. Each gate you pass through also grants a small bonus, +5 to all attributes. Every board has 4 of these gates, typically located at the center of each edge. But players usually just use one to enter a board and another to exit and connect to their next one.
So since players can't possibly invest in every single node on every board, there just aren't enough points, right?
Correct, points are limited.
Strategic choices are absolutely key then. How do you approach picking boards?
Well, a good starting point is to create a priority list. Look at all 8 unique boards available for your specific class. Then pick the best, say 5 or 6, that fit your build concept, and prioritize them.
Wait, only 5 or 6? I thought there were 8.
There are 8 unique boards per class, but you can only have a maximum of 4 additional boards attached, plus your starting board. So a total of 5 active boards maximum. You can't use all 8.
Ah, okay. That makes the choice even more impactful. 5 boards total.
Exactly. A big factor in your decision should be legendary node synergy. If a legendary node strongly synergizes with your specific build it directly buffs your main damage skill, it should be high on your list. Also, consider the early versus late game. Some boards offer great benefits right away, good for early endgame progression. Others might have powerful nodes locked behind high attribute requirements, making them better suited for fully geared, highly optimized late game setups. You might even plan for 2 different Paragon layouts over the course of your character's progression. Respect costs allow for that.
Interesting. What about the smaller nodes?
Don't just look at the rare nodes in isolation. Evaluate them as a single cluster with the surrounding magic nodes. Sometimes a cluster of decent magic nodes makes taking a slightly less exciting rare node totally worth the investment because the overall value is high. And of course, glyph planning is vital. Plan ahead for the glyphs you want to level and use. Find sockets on boards that have a high density of the attributes those glyphs need to activate their secondary bonuses. More compatible sockets mean more build flexibility. Lastly, always consider pathing efficiency. Think about the number of Paragon points needed to reach your desired nodes. How many travel points are you spending? Fewer points to make a board work means more points available for other juicy nodes elsewhere on your boards. Efficiency is key.
And don't just go all in on damage, right?
Definitely not. Don't just overvalue offensive nodes. Ensure your chosen boards provide a good balance of offense and defense. Staying alive is pretty important in Diablo IV.
True that. So how do you actually get these Paragon points? Are they just from leveling?
As powerful as the Paragon system is, Paragon points are indeed a limited resource. There are only 3 ways to gain them throughout your journey post-level 50 when Paragon starts. First, yes, by leveling up your character. You get 4 points per level from 50 to 100. Second, by completing renown objectives in each of the game's zones. Maxing renown in all zones gives a chunk of points. And third, by collecting all the altars of Lilith hidden throughout the world. Each altar gives stats, but some also grant Paragon points account-wide. When you complete all of these objectives, hit level 100, max renown, find all altars players can gain a total of 225 Paragon points. That's your budget. Correction. The outline mentioned 327 points, possibly due to changes or source variations. Let's stick to the concept of limited points.
Okay, 225 points to spend across potentially 5 boards. That requires careful planning.
Very careful planning.
Now, when you reach a board attachment gate, that's your moment to choose your next Paragon board from your class's unique options. You mentioned you can preview and rotate.
Yes, you can preview the entire layout of the next board and rotate it in 90-degree steps before you commit and attach it. This preview mode is absolutely invaluable for planning your path efficiently.
So what are some key pathing strategies? How do you navigate these boards effectively?
The main goal is always finding the shortest route to the nodes you actually want. Maximize efficiency. Take the most direct path possible to major nodes, rare, legendary glyph sockets, saving those valuable points. Avoid unnecessary detours. This also involves strategically rotating boards. Since boards can be rotated 90 degrees when you attach them, you can connect them optimally, maybe bringing a desired cluster closer to the entry gate, allowing you to reach nodes more efficiently. Don't underestimate rotation.
What if the nodes you want are really spread out?
Right, sometimes a board will have faraway valuable nodes where the stuff in between offers very little value to your build. It feels bad pathing through junk. In these rare cases, advanced planning might suggest it's better to jump into a board multiple times. Meaning, you enter the board, grab a close cluster, exit through another gate, connect a different board, and then maybe later connect back into that first board from a different gate to reach the faraway cluster more efficiently.
Whoa, okay, that sounds like some serious 4D chess level planning.
It takes a lot of planning and forethought, definitely something for build guide creators or dedicated players, but success can mean saving several crucial points. And finally, there's the common practice of a strategic reset. Early on, maybe level 50-75, players might rush to specific powerful nodes to get a quick power spike. Later, once your build is further progressed, you have more Paragon points available and maybe better glyphs. You might reset your entire Paragon board, which costs gold, scaling with points spent, for a more optimal, efficient, long-term layout.
We've all been there, right? Dumping points into a Paragon board early on, only to realize later we took a massive detour through a desert of useless nodes just to reach one thing.
Exactly. That's why pathing efficiency is so crucial from the start, if possible.
So, we've mentioned glyphs multiple times. Let's talk about them. The final layer.
Pretty much. Paragon glyphs are the final, incredibly powerful layer of customization. These are rune-like items that you socket into those glyph sockets on your Paragon boards. They're a massive addition to your character's power, especially after level 50-60. Players primarily level them up by completing the pit, which is a challenging endgame PvE activity with scaling difficulty.
So what exactly are they? What do they do?
They are designed to empower endgame builds with very specific, often powerful effects. Things like increased damage against healthy enemies or injured enemies, or boosts to resource generation, or making certain damage types much stronger. Each glyph has a specific structure. First, there's a base bonus. This applies as soon as you socket the glyph, and it often scales with a specific attribute gathered from allocated Paragon nodes within its radius. For example, the fulminate glyph grants bonus lightning damage for every 5 dexterity allocated within its radius. So you'd want to put it in a socket surrounded by dexterity nodes.
Okay, a radius effect based on nearby stats.
Right. Then there's an additional bonus. This is usually a more powerful effect, and it only unlocks when you allocate enough Paragon nodes within its radius to reach a specified attribute threshold, like requires 25 dexterity in radius. Once you hit that, bam, the second bonus activates. And crucially, a glyph's radius starts relatively small, covering just the immediately adjacent nodes. But as you level the glyph up, its radius increases. It gets bigger at glyph level 15, allowing it to affect more nodes. And it reaches its maximum radius at level 46, I believe, based on outline. Could be subject to change in patches. At a certain high level, it also upgrades from rare to legendary quality.
Leveling them up seems important then, especially for that radius increase.
Absolutely vital. A larger radius means it can potentially activate its additional bonus more easily by reaching more attribute nodes, or buff more magicware nodes if that's its effect.
How do you get these glyphs in the first place? Are they rare?
Acquiring glyphs themselves is actually relatively easy. After level 50, pretty much any activity has a chance to drop them until you have one of each type available to your class. The best ways to guarantee glyph drops, especially early on, are running the pit or nightmare dungeons. Collecting the full set you might eventually want for different builds will take time, but you'll steadily accumulate them just by playing the endgame.
Okay, so getting them isn't the bottleneck, it's leveling them.
Exactly. Upgrading glyphs is the real grind. This is done after successfully clearing the pit boss within the timer. You get a certain number of upgrade attempts. I think it's 3 baseline, plus 1 extra if you don't die during a pit run, so potentially 4 attempts per successful run. The success chance of applying those points depends on the level of the pit you just cleared relative to the glyph's current level. It's 100% success if the pit level is, say, 10 levels or more ahead of your glyph. The chance reduces as the levels get closer. And there's a bonus upgrade mechanic too. If the pit level is significantly ahead, like 20 plus levels, your glyph might get a bonus upgrade, effectively gaining 2 levels worth of XP from 1 point application.
So running higher pits gives faster glyph XP. Makes sense. What's the max level?
The max levels has actually been increased significantly in recent updates, going way beyond the old cap of 21. I think the outline mentioned 100. That's a massive grind, requiring tons of pit runs. And there's that key upgrade point. At glyph level 45, again, based on outline subject to change, it costs a hefty sum of gem fragments, like 10,000, to upgrade it from rare to legendary quality. This upgrade usually grants an additional increase to its radius size and potentially unlocks a powerful new affix or enhances an existing one. It's a major power spike for the glyph.
Now, for something brand new and incredibly exciting that's making a triumphant return, rune words. Brace yourselves, because beloved from Diablo II, rune words are finally back in the new Vessel of Hatred expansion. This is offering exciting new customization avenues and, get this, even access to abilities from other classes.
Yeah, this is a huge game changer for build diversity. I know this is a feature many players have been clamoring for since D4 launched. It's finally here.
So how do they work in D4? Is it like D2 where you put runes in specific orders?
It's a bit different, actually. Simpler in some ways, but still deep. Rune words in D4 are made from combining just 2 distinct types of runes in a single item. 1 rune of ritual and 1 rune of invocation. And players can only have a maximum of 2 rune words active on their character at any given time. So 2 items with rune words equipped.
Okay, ritual and invocation. Cause and effect.
Exactly. Let's delve into what each type does. Runes of ritual are essentially the cause runes. They provide a specific condition you must meet during gameplay to generate a resource called offering. The more demanding or specific the condition, generally the more offering you get in one go when you meet it. There are apparently 17 different types of these ritual runes. Examples include Ahu, which generates offering based on lucky hit chance. Bakken, which generates offering when you travel a certain distance, like 5 meters. Igni, which stores offering generated from using non-basic skills. Tam, which gives offering when you cast a non-channeled core skill. And Exal is particularly interesting. This one seems to allow players to somehow evoke power or effects related to another class, which is wild.
Whoa, cross-class stuff. Okay, that opens up possibilities.
Big time. Then you have runes of invocation, which are the effect runes, the payoff. Once you meet the required offering threshold, generated by your paired ritual rune, this invocation rune's effect triggers. And these effects are incredibly varied. They can range from granting additional skill ranks temporarily, to restoring resources, to even causing specific class skills from other classes to activate. The outline listed 27 types of these. Examples here include Ya, which can replace your next evade action with the sorcerer's teleport skill, blinking you further and making you unstoppable for a moment. That's huge for mobility or escape. Ohm seems to evoke the barbarian's warcry skill, buffing your damage and maybe allies nearby. Vex could give you a temporary +1 rank to all of your skills. Zan might guarantee your next attack is both a critical strike and an overpower for massive burst damage. Mott could grant the effects of the rogue's Dark Shroud skill, giving you damage reduction shadows. Kaknex could provide a damage boost based on resource spending. And Thul might trigger the sorcerer's Mystical Frost Nova, freezing enemies around you.
Man, the combinations sound insane. Teleporting barbs, war-crying sorks.
The potential for hybrid effects and build creativity is truly staggering with this system. Now, there are some important restrictions. As mentioned, you can only have 2 rune words active on a character total. You cannot use 2 of the exact same rune, like 2 back runes. You also cannot use 2 ritual runes together or 2 invocation runes together in the same item. It must be one of each.
One cause, one effect per item. Got it. What items can they go in?
And crucially, socketing them is very specific. Rune words can only be created in items that naturally have 2 sockets. This limits them to helms, chest armor, legs, and 2-handed weapons. One-handers, gloves, boots, jewelry. They generally only have 1 socket max, so no rune words there.
Okay, so only specific slots. And what about gems?
That's the other big choice. Players also cannot equip both gems and runes in the same item slot. If an item has 2 sockets, you choose. Fill them with 2 gems, or fill them with 1 ritual and 1 invocation rune to make a rune word. You can't mix.
Ah, so it's a trade-off. Give up gem stats for rune word power.
Exactly. It's a significant decision you have to make for those key gear slots. Oh, and runes themselves come in magic, rare, and legendary rarity, with higher rarity naturally meaning stronger effects or maybe lower offering costs. And importantly, runes themselves are tradable, which is great for the economy and for finding the specific ones you need.
Tradable runes, that's huge. Okay,
Yeah.
so explain the mechanic again. How does the offering and trigger work?
Yeah, the core of rune word mechanics is actually simpler than it sounds once you see it. Players combine 1 rune of ritual, cause, and 1 rune of invocation effect in a 2-socket item. Let's use an example from the outline. Bakerup ritual.travel 5 meters, gain 50 offering, plus Ja, invocation.activates teleport evade at 250 offering. So you socket Back and Ja into your helm. Every time you run 5 meters, you generate 50 offering. To trigger Ja, you need 250 offering. So you'd need to travel 25 meters, 5 times 5 meters, to generate enough offering. 5 times 50 equals 250. Once you hit that 250 offering threshold, boom, your next evade becomes a teleport instead of the standard dash. Then the offering resets and you start accumulating again.
Okay, meet condition, build resource, hit threshold, trigger effect. Makes sense. What about overflow?
Right, this leads to the concept of overflow. What if you generate more offering than needed to trigger the invocation rune? Using our example, maybe you traveled 40 meters, 8 by 5 meters before your next evade. That's 400 offering generated, 8 by 50. But Ja only costs 250. That extra 150 offering is overflow. For some runes, this overflow might trigger additional criteria or make the effect stronger. The sources suggest you actually want to stack as much overflow as possible, as the bonus applied might be proportional to how much overflow is acquired.
Interesting. So overgenerating isn't wasted. It might even be beneficial.
It seems so, yeah. It adds another layer of depth to optimizing your rune word combinations and your playstyle to generate offering efficiently.
How do we get our hands on these runes? Just random drops.
Obtaining runes is tied to activities primarily within the Vessel of Hatred expansion content set in the Nahantu region. They drop from various sources like world bosses appearing in the Hantu, the new Kurast Undercity dungeon system, Helltide chests within the expansion zones, and even Tree of Whispers reward caches turned in there. But beyond simply finding them as drops, players can also engage in rune crafting at the jeweler.
Crafting runes, how does that work?
If you have multiple runes of the same name that you don't need, you can apparently combine 3 of them to craft a random different rune. So 3 back runes might craft you a random jaw rune instead, for example. It helps you target what you're missing. And if you're using non-legendary runes, magic rare, in this crafting process, you even have a chance to create a rune of the next highest rarity. So 3 magic might yield a rare.
Okay, a way to convert dupes and maybe upgrade rarity. Useful.
Very useful. And what's truly exciting, as mentioned in the sources, is that runes are also a required component for crafting some of the most powerful items in the game. Mythic uniques.
Hey, you can craft mythic uniques now, using runes.
It appears so. Each mythic unique crafting recipe requires incredibly rare resplendent sparks, which come from salvaging other mythics or specific endgame achievements, plus specific quantities of specific legendary, rare, and magic runes. For instance, the outline example showed crafting the coveted Endariel's Visage Helm requires a set recipe: 6 legendary Tam runes, 6 rare Quox runes, 6 magic Zan runes, and 2 resplendent sparks.
Whoa, that's a lot, but it's a direct path.
It's a massive material sink for sure, but it provides a deterministic, albeit extremely costly, path to acquiring some of the game's ultimate chase gear, rather than relying purely on minuscule drop rates from bosses. It's a huge addition for dedicated players.
We've talked about all these amazing systems for customizing your character aspects, tempering, masterworking, Paragon, rune words. It's a lot. But over at the ultimate gear itself, the absolute pinnacle drops, that would be unique and especially mythic unique items, right?
Absolutely. These are, without a doubt, the rarest items you can find in Diablo IV, designed to be the ultimate chase items. They come with incredibly powerful, often build-defining effects that can completely alter your character's playstyle. Sometimes you build your entire character around a single unique.
But here's something surprising I read in the notes. Despite their rarity, they are not always the absolute best-in-slot gear for every build. How can that be?
It's true, and an important point. Sometimes a perfectly tempered and masterwork legendary item may be one with multiple greater affixes that perfectly match your build's needs. That legendary can actually outperform a unique item in that same slot, even a mythic unique sometimes. It really all comes down to context, specific build synergy, and what stats you need most. The fixed nature of unique affixes isn't always optimal compared to a customizable legendary.
That's a great insight for players to keep in mind. Don't just assume unique best. Always evaluate.
Exactly. Evaluate based on your build's needs.
So, okay, how they drop. Where do we find these things?
Most standard uniques can technically be found in any world tier difficulty, but you really want the best versions. The coveted ancestral uniques, which always have 800 item power and come with a guaranteed greater affix, only drop in Torment difficulties, World Tier 4, and potentially a new Tier 5 in the expansion. Mythic uniques are even rarer, the Ubers. They require at least Torment 1 difficulty, World Tier 4, to even have a chance to drop. And they are described in the sources as nearly impossible to find from just killing random monsters out in the world. The odds are astronomical.
So, random world drop isn't the way for mythics. How do you target them?
If you're serious about hunting mythic uniques, you need to focus on target farming them from specific endgame bosses fought in Torment difficulties. The main list includes Echo of Varshan, the Beast in the Ice, Grigor the Galvanic Saint, Lord Zur, and the Big Duo, Duriel, King of Maggots, and the new Echo of Andariel.
Okay, boss farming. Are there other sources for regular uniques too?
Yes, beyond those specific bosses, regular uniques can also drop from random world enemies, just much lower chance, treasure goblins, always worth chasing, Helltide chests. Importantly, certain chest types like helms or weapons have a higher chance to drop uniques for that specific slot. Gambling obols at the Purveyor of Curiosities, low chance but possible. Turning in grim favors for whisper chests at the Tree of Whispers. And running nightmare dungeons, which generally have an increased drop chance for legendaries and uniques compared to regular dungeons.
Got it. Lots of avenues, but bosses are key for the top tier. Now let's talk mythic unique specifics. You mentioned Duriel and Andariel.
Right. While all the tormented endgame bosses, Varshan, Grigor, Zur, Beast, can technically drop mythic uniques at a very low rate, Duriel, King of Maggots, and Echo of Andariel are explicitly stated in our sources as the main sources of these incredibly rare uber uniques. They have the highest drop chance. Apparently, they each have multiple chances per kill at roughly a 1.5% drop rate for any mythic unique from their loot table. Which means, astonishingly, you can potentially get multiple mythic uniques from a single boss kill if you get incredibly lucky.
Multiple Ubers at once. Okay, that's some serious jackpot potential right there.
Absolutely. It makes farming them very appealing, despite the effort needed to summon them. What makes mythic uniques so special beyond their rarity is their stats. They always drop at the maximum item power, currently 800, maybe higher post-expansion. They always have at least one greater affix guaranteed, and crucially, they always come with the maximum possible roll ranges on all of their affixes.
Max rolls guaranteed. Wow.
Yes. This means when you finally find one, it's already perfectly rolled, stat-wise. It removes much of the RNG and re-rolling grind associated with perfecting other gear types. It truly is the pinnacle reward.
Okay, so finding one is the challenge, but once you have it, it's perfect.
Pretty much, yeah. Now, this naturally raises an important question. How on earth do you efficiently gather all the mountains of materials and currencies needed to fuel all these complex systems? Tempering, masterworking, crafting rune words, crafting mythics, summoning all those endgame bosses. It takes a lot of stuff.
Yeah, my inventory is always overflowing with random bits and bobs. What's the strategy?
The universal rule of thumb in Diablo IV seems to be ABC, always be collecting. It's a mindset as much as a strategy. Pick up everything.
ABC, I like it. Break it down for us. What should we be grabbing?
Okay, let's break down the stock goods you should always be collecting as you play. For plants, you'll need tons of bundled herbs, like gallowvine, biteberry, etc. For crafting elixirs and upgrading your healing potions at the alchemist. Angel Breath is a scarcer, more valuable plant used for higher level elixirs. It tends to drop more from elites, Nightmare Dungeons reward screens, and those fiend roses you click in Helltide. Keep an eye out for plant nodes around terrain edges, near local events, and sometimes as side quest rewards. Hoover them up. For ores, iron chunks are the basic currency for weapon armor crafting and upgrades. Found similarly around terrain edges, cliffs, caves. Keep an eye out for the special glittering ore veins, they look different, and also drop valuable gem fragments alongside the ore. And for skins, rawhide and superior leather come from killing wildlife and beasts, also used for armor crafting and upgrades. Kill Bambi. It's for the greater good.
Noted. Kill Bambi for upgrades. What about salvage stuff?
Salvage materials are absolutely crucial for almost all crafting and upgrades, especially endgame ones. You get specific materials from salvaging higher rarity items. Abstruse sigils, primarily from legendary jewelry, amulets, rings. Coiling wards from legendary armor, helm, chest, gloves, pants, boots. And baleful fragments from legendary weapons. But here's a key tip. Don't overlook veiled crystals. These come primarily from salvaging rare yellow items.
The yellows. I usually just sell those if they're not upgrades.
Big mistake, potentially. Early on, selling might be okay for gold, but later, veiled crystals become a major bottleneck for enchanting and other crafts. So the advice is, don't ignore rare items. Pick them up, quickly check if they're an upgrade, and if not, salvage them, especially later in the game to keep your veiled crystal income high.
Okay, salvage yellows for crystals. Good tip.
Yeah.
Any other ways to get salvage mats?
Yeah, if you need specific types, like lots of baleful fragments from weapons, you can gamble obols at the Purveyor of Curiosity specifically on weapons, then salvage everything you get. Or use the PvP vendors if you have red dust. It lets you target item types for efficient salvage.
Smart. What about Helltide? I know that's important.
Crucial. For Helltide materials, the big one is Forgotten Souls. These are absolutely vital for upgrading gear and especially for enchanting affixes at the occultist. You find Forgotten Souls mostly from opening the Tortured Glyphs, chests, that require aberrant cinders, defeating the special Helltide commander bosses that roam around, and participating in the portal invasion events. Grouping up in Helltide helps you gather aberrant cinders faster, letting you open more chests and get more souls. Helltide is basically mandatory endgame farming.
Nightmare Dungeons. What do we get there besides XP and glyphs?
In Nightmare Dungeons, the main unique material you'll get is sigil powder. This comes from salvaging unwanted nightmare sigils at the occultist. You use sigil powder to craft new nightmare sigils, allowing you to target specific dungeons or higher tiers. To get more sigils to salvage a run, complete Whispers of the Dead, the reward caches often contain sigils, or simply run easy Nightmare Dungeons. They typically drop multiple new sigils per completion. It's a self-sustaining loop.
Okay, powder fuels more sigils. Got it. What about really late game stuff?
Right, then we have the unusual materials, mostly needed for the highest tiers of endgame content. Artificer's Stone. This is the key needed to enter the pit for glyph leveling. You get these from completing nightmare dungeons, turning in Whispers of the Dead, killing world bosses, and opening Helltide tortured gifts. They become common once you're doing that content. Masterworking materials. Primarily Obusite, Ingolith, and Nethiron, different tiers for different MW ranks. As mentioned, these are obtained primarily from completing runs in the pit, nightmare dungeons, the Undercity rewards, and infernal hordes. The pit seems like the best source now. Resplendent sparks. These are ultra rare, used solely to target craft mythic uniques, as we discussed with rune words. Players get these very sparingly. From salvaging existing mythic uniques, ouch, guaranteed from your first kill of certain Torment 4 bosses each season, or from defeating the pinnacle boss, Uber Lilith, very hard to come by. And scattered prisms. These are used to add sockets to gear that doesn't already have them, specifically ancestral armor, weapons, and jewelry. These drop occasionally from world bosses, treasure goblins, very rarely from elites and legion events. They're valuable, so save them.
Yeah, I don't want to waste a prism adding a socket to mediocre gear. Save them for the good stuff.
Exactly. Only use them on gear that already has the majority of the correct affixes you need, like a near-perfect item that just needs sockets.
What about basic gems and skulls? Do we need to worry about those?
Gem and skull fragments are common drops from enemies, local events, and especially those glittering ore nodes. They drop constantly. Players can combine these fragments with gold at the jeweler to craft any level of gem or skull you need, all the way up to royal. And if you craft one you no longer need, or find lower tier gems, you can salvage them back into fragments. So it provides great flexibility. You're never really short, just need gold to craft.
Okay, good to know. Now, the boss lair keys. This sounds important for target farming.
Extremely important. To challenge those specific endgame bosses like Varshan, Grigor, Zur, and Beast in the Ice, and access their unique loot tables, which include specific uniques more likely to drop. You need specific materials to summon them at their altars. For instance, you need Malignant Hearts from Tree of Whispers caches in specific zones for Echo of Varshan. You need Living Steel from Special Tortured Gifts in Helltide for Grigor, Distilled Fear for Beast, Exquisite Blood for Zur. Farming these specific materials becomes a core endgame loop, because these lesser bosses then drop the final key materials needed to summon the main uber-unique sources, Duriel and Andariel. Like Shards of Agony from Grigor and Mucus-Slick Eggs from Varshan combined to summon Duriel.
Ah, so it's a multi-step process. Farm mats for intermediate bosses, then use their drops to summon the uber bosses.
Exactly. Duriel and Andariel are the primary targets if your ultimate goal is those elusive mythic uniques, so you'll be indirectly farming the other 4 bosses constantly to get summon materials for the big 2.
Okay, that clarifies the boss farming loop. Now let's talk currency gold is king. I hear this all the time.
It absolutely is. Gold fuels almost everything in Diablo IV's endgame. Upgrading gear at the blacksmith, enchanting affixes at the occultist, which gets exponentially more expensive with each reroll, extracting and imprinting aspects, specing your skills in Paragon points, masterworking, even just repairing your gear after death. It all costs gold, often millions.
So what's rule #1 for gold?
Don't overspend needlessly, especially on enchanting. If you upgrade every minor piece of gear you find, or try to reroll an affix 20 times on a temporary item, you'll go broke fast. Be judicious.
What are the best ways to actually make gold down?
The sources suggest a few reliable methods. Completing Whispers of the Dead objectives and turning in Grim Favors is consistently good. The reward caches often contain a good chunk of gold, potentially millions per turn-in at higher levels, especially if you combine Whisper objectives with other activities like Helltides or dungeons for efficiency. And simply selling unwanted rare items, yellows, can still be decent income, especially early on, or if they have high item power. They can sell for 10-20k gold or more each. Just balance selling versus salvaging for veiled crystals based on your needs.
What about the other currencies? Obols, cinders, dust?
Right, obols. Use these to target gamble for specific gear slots at the Purveyor of Curiosities. Need new gloves. Gamble only on gloves. You get obols primarily from completing local events marked on the map and some side quests. Max out your obols cap often. Aberrant Cinders. This is the Helltide-specific currency used to open tortured gifts for Forgotten Souls, legendaries, and potentially uniques. As mentioned, grouping up in Helltide significantly increases your cinder gain rate. And Red Dust. This comes exclusively from purifying seeds of hatred gathered in the PvP zones, Fields of Hatred. Farm seeds by killing monsters or players there, then purify them at an altar. Always farm in groups for safety in PvP, as any unpurified seeds are lost if you die. Once purified, the red dust is safe and can be spent at special PvP vendors for cosmetics and targeted gear caches.
Lots of currencies to manage. Finally, gear farming itself. Legendaries, uniques. What's the baseline strategy?
Honestly, the tried and true method is simply kill, kill, kill. Volume is key. Killing high-density packs of monsters is paramount for maximizing your loot drops per hour. More kills want more chances. Elites are always better than regular enemies, dropping more loot and having higher chances for better quality items, so focus on areas or activities with good elite density.
Where are the best spots for elites in density?
Good spots typically include the PvP zones, high density but risky, Helltide events, constant spawns events, regular dungeons, especially those favored for density, and nightmare dungeons, guaranteed high density and objective rewards. A great overall strategy is to overlap activities whenever possible. For example, do a dungeon that is also a Whisper objective and located within an active Helltide zone. You're triple dipping on rewards then. Combine local events with Whispers for Obols and Grim Favors simultaneously. Efficiency stacking.
Smart. Maximize rewards per minute.
Yeah, exactly. Nightmare dungeons are also excellent because they offer a guaranteed legendary item with a solid chance for a unique upon completion. Consistent rewards. And as we've hammered home, fight the endgame bosses. This is essential for target farming specific unique items that are on their loot tables and absolutely mandatory if you want to hunt for mythic uniques from Duriel and Undariel. And don't forget, world bosses, they spawn periodically, are fun group activities, and their weekly reward cache first kill per week offers guaranteed legendaries and a good chance at uniques. Always try to catch those when they're up.
Wow, what a journey. Okay, that was a lot. From understanding the basics of item power and rarity all the way through legendary aspects, tempering, masterworking, the deep strategic layers of Paragon boards and glyphs, we've covered a tremendous amount. I think you, the listener, should now have a truly comprehensive understanding of how to power up your character in Diablo IV. I know I learned a few things, especially some nuances like the 30% rule for skill ranks on Masterworking. I never quite grasped that before diving into these sources.
Yeah, it's incredibly layered, isn't it? And if we try and connect this all back to the bigger picture, with so many interconnected systems, from carefully selecting your Paragon paths, spending points efficiently, strategically re-rolling tempering affixes, and maybe using that one scroll of restoration, leveling the right glyphs, and now combining ritual and invocation runes. It's really clear that true power in Diablo IV isn't just about finding the single best piece of gear anymore. It's about understanding and mastering the synergy between all these intricate layers, how they all work together. So the final thought maybe is, with all these systems available to you, what system will you prioritize mastering first on your quest for ultimate power in Sanctuary?